Hello. Uh, Hello to everyone watching. My name is Tim Sang from Automata. We have here today with us Susan Simpson and Terence McFarland. I'm so glad that they're here. I'm going to introduce them actually right away and then just hand it off over to them. But before we do that, I wanted to quickly announce our title for today, and that is Incandescent and Undivided, featuring Susan Simpson and Terence McFarland in conversation. So I'll quickly read our bios and then hand it off over to them. Uh, Susan Simpson is a Los Angeles-based multidisciplinary artist and designer and co-artistic director of Automata. Her practice includes puppet theater, dioramas, and animation. She makes performances and interactive public artworks that engage viewers in intimate viewing. Her works often investigate the history, mythology, and social dynamics of the sites where they are located. Much of her performance work has been focused on the history of liberational thought and action in the queer communities. She has received funding from the Creative Capital, the Mack Fund, Center for Cultural Innovation, Jim Henson Foundation, California Community Foundation, and the Durfee Foundation. She is a recipient of the Center Theater Group's Richard E. Sherwood Award. Joining her will be also Terence McFarland, who is a catalyst, a co-creator who believes our collective freedom and joy flows through our connection to creativity, expression, and harnessing our unique impulses. For 35 years, he has worked with individuals, brands, and organizations at the intersection of how we see ourselves and understand one another in the world. Most recently as the Associate Executive Director at the Soraya, a 1,700-seat performing arts venue at CSUN from 2015 to 2020. And also for the decade prior as the CEO of LA Stage Alliance, LA's largest performing arts service organization. In May, I'm guessing May of 2021, as in like tomorrow, yeah, Terence will be launching a coaching and consulting practice. McFarland teaches in the Master of Arts in Arts Administrative program at Goucher College. He holds a BFA and MFA from CalArts and certificates in executive education programs at Stanford University and Harvard Business School. Without further ado, I'd like to kind of pass this over. Oh, before we do that, I just want a quick word to our viewers today. If you have any questions at any time during our session today, please go ahead and post them onto our Facebook wall, and I'll be keeping a close eye on that. But yeah, without further ado, I'll just go ahead and hand over the time to Susan and Terence. Yeah.
Thanks, Tim. Hi, Susan.
Great. Hey, Terence. How's it going? Thank you,
It's
Tim.
going well.
So maybe I will start by just saying how Terence and I know each other because we actually go way, way back. Terence and I were grad students at the same time at CalArts. And we met up in 1999 and worked on a project together. It was my thesis project, and I was doing a kind of combined program in theater and animation. And it was sort of my first foray into kind of full-scale puppet production. And Terence came in and was a puppeteer and also just like an amazing creative force within the project. And and I just remember thinking like, wow, like who's this guy? Like where'd he come from? And he did come in like, already like full force with the whole creative life that he had taken with him from New York and brought here to LA. So I think, Tim, do you have that picture? There's a picture that I found in the last couple days of that production. Um, so, um, So the piece was called The Illuminist, and it featured these kind of creaky life-size puppets, and it was kind of the first like kind of queer discovering of self, one of probably many that I made using puppets, and sort of the idea of, constructed bodies and identity. And that's Terence there on the bottom, and um, wearing the mask, so which looks totally natural and like what we do all the time now. So
We were so ahead of ourselves.
well, yes, we were. So yeah, that's kind of how Terence and I first met up.
I'm having such sense memory of like holding the wooden feet together and like sliding my hand into the little handhold spine connector of those puppets.
Oh, yeah, I don't. Yeah, it was quite a long time ago, but I do remember those puppets being kind of very human-like in their creakiness, and also probably somewhat hard to manipulate and get around. So anyway, that's our beginnings, and then we have known each other and sort of been in overlapping, theater and creative scenes ever since then.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'm happy to be in conversation with you. That was such a fun project, and as you said, such a long time ago. But obviously, I've been staying in touch with everything Automata has been doing, and attended performances from time to time. And I was super excited when I saw on Instagram you beginning to post some imagery from this project. So I'd love to hear a little bit about the gestation process for this project, how it came to, how your time came to be in residency at the space during pandemic times.
Yeah. So this project came about kind of, it's been during this pandemic time, and it's a project that came about originally inspired by a passage in Stone Butch Blues, which I went back and read again, and I had a notion of a production that where people just got up and read passages from the book, but that made me go back and just read the book again, and I was just struck by this one line, and it is a line, it's the main character, Jess, who is sort of a fictionalized version of Leslie Feinberg, who wrote the book. And
for those that don't know the book, can you just say a little bit?
Oh yeah, it's a book from the early 90s, I think, 91 maybe. And it's a story of Leslie Feinberg's life growing up as a butch lesbian in Buffalo, New York, and then their kind of life coming of age there, and then moving to New York City. And it's a really important book to a lot of queer people, to a lot of queer women especially, I think, and trans people, and I don't know, just it's a really important book to a lot of people. Yeah. It doesn't need to be said to who. So anyway, so there's a passage where her character, Jess, says, "I wish we had words that we would go out of our way to say out loud." And it's while they're in conversation about just how they're in conversation with another trans queer person about just like how they would like to be identified and defined, and it really struck me, words so pretty we would go out of our way to say them out loud. And I thought right now at this time when people are working so ferociously to shape public language and be defined and spoken about as they want to be spoken about, and that's such a great moment in that way. And I think for me personally, I think that words so pretty we would go out of our way to say them out loud spoke to me something about like looking for the imaginative way, the places that really speak to our kind of visionary and creative places, not just, singular words that might define our sexuality or our gender, but whole realms of language. And so then that led me into actual both spoken and written language and visual language. And the piece is entitled Incandescent and Undivided, which is a passage from Virginia Woolf speaking about the androgynous mind in a room of her own. And she speaks about it as incandescent and undivided, which I thought, when I read that, I was like, oh, those are some words that I might go out of my way to say out loud. So that's the inspiration for the title of it. And then I think the project then overlaps with my other sort of lifelong aesthetic pursuit that has to do with alien forms and also botanical forms. And I think this has come up in my work quite a lot. My most recent piece, Machine for Living, had a woman who was transforming into an alien life force, and that took the form of her basically becoming more botanical and more plant-like. And that's sort of how she became more like sort of open to the world. And then in the pandemic, I've just become obsessed with plants and trees and learning, like I'm identifying all the trees in my neighborhood. And more than that, just like looking at how they, just the forms they take. And now that it's spring, like just like all the flowering that's happening, and walking, looking on the ground and seeing flowers and pine cones and things that identify them. So it's just a really heightened sense of vision that I didn't have before. And so I think that botanical aesthetic, thinking about that in the ways that it overlaps with queer identity, which to me feels obvious, but I imagine maybe not for everyone. But I mean, there's a very intellectual kind of connection, or just like an obvious connection of like plants flower in ways. Most commonly, they have what are called perfect flowers or hermaphroditic flowers that have both like the some would say biologically male, or the anthers, and then also the pistil like within one flower. So they have both sort of biological sex cells within one plant. So and one flower. So those are called perfect flowers or hermaphroditic flowers. So on a very, very like concrete level, like, oh, look, the plant world just operates on different structure. But
totally. And there's a gender nonconforming artist and sort of thinker, Alok, who posted something on Instagram yesterday. He does these sort of book reports, and it was from a book, Evolution's Rainbow, Diversity, Gender, and Sexuality in Nature, and was talking exactly about that. Sort of like the intersex nature of the flora and fauna. So much of the flora and fauna world. Yeah, and that the pumpkin vine has both male and female flowers on their vine. Right.
Yeah. So yeah, just on that very concrete level, like it's just, it's aspirational to be more plant-like. But then also there's just the aesthetics of it, and just like the aesthetics of flowering plants that is just, I think the word we were using the other day is exuberant, and there's so many other words really for it, but that it just appeals to a sort of liberated body in a way, I think. So
yeah, I would agree. There was a podcast that I listened to, The Spiritual Gaze, which are a local LA couple, but they had Don Kilhefner, who was one of the founders of the Mattachine Society and the Radical Fairies, and sort of talking about the role of queer and homosexual folks in the greater scheme of things. And he brought up this book, Biological Exuberance, animals, homosexuality, and natural diversity. And you're sort of thinking about the ways in which we kind of present ourselves as individuals and present or perform gender. And I think that's a really kind of, interesting moment. And no doubt that that book had been written in the 90s when that stuff was really kind of germinating. And we were having such progress in some ways in terms of LGBT issues at the time, but it sort of became this assimilation thread, right? The don't ask, don't tell, the gay marriage, whereas the more radical queer folks were like, wait, that's not what we were necessarily fighting for. We want the collective liberation and freedom of all.
Right. Yeah.
And so how did that manifest in the studio when you got to
so then
begin to work on this?
Right. So then I started making. Well, first I made a puppet because I'm a puppeteer and I make puppets, and I made this kind of non-binary puppet, and I should say that for all of the time that I've been working in puppetry, I think the reason I'm drawn to it is just the very nature of the puppet, and like the puppet as the constructed identity that it is. Like it just reinforces the idea that we make ourselves, and that the effort of it is obvious, and the effort of it is also sort of the pathos of the whole thing. It's like that our effort in making ourselves is a beautiful thing. So the puppet. And so then I started making just costumes for the puppet that were sort of botanically inspired, not super specific, most of them, those some more than others. So and then that kind of just built on itself, just making more and more things, and just improvisational kind of working with materials that I had in my studio, and then doing that as I came to Automata, building a lot of that there, and then while I was at Automata, the first part of it was really just photographing it, because once I had made all these things, I thought there's a performance aspect to this that's going to come at some point. But maybe not alone by myself here at Automata during the pandemic. And actually, these are sculptural objects too. And so I started kind of photographing them seriously. And then from there, just also worked with creating video of the pieces so that they could have a life also.
So the idea of the sort of materials and forms in motion.
Yeah.
Got it. And do you have a sense yet of a sort of narrative flow or narrative arc, or is it still kind of in early stages?
I think that this is going to be a piece that is not all that narrative. I think that I really am interested in the movement and the life of these. I mean, I should say right now it's one single puppet that transforms, and I think there'll be others. But I think the movement and the performance is more dance and movement based, and non-narrative. So making the videos helped me sort of understand it. There were sort of dream moments, and not narrative moments, I guess. So
sure.
Maybe we should look at some of this.
let's do it.
Keep talking.
Let's do it.
Should I pull up the video?
Yeah, I should say the video actually is it's the only sort of non-puppet thing, but it speaks to the inspiration for the whole piece. We could look at it, and then I could just say how I made that.
Okay, great. Yeah, should we pull up the number 3? This one?
Yeah, that's
okay.
it.
Got it.
Okay. Perhaps we should have said beforehand that it was a silent film, in case anyone was wondering what this was.
My bad.
It's okay.
So what is it that we were looking at there? So walk us through what we're seeing.
In the really geeky way, I can just show you. I have made a series of these boxes, and they're just layered paper, and then the paper slots in, and then you can move the light source around on the top, and it lights up different layers of it as you go. So it creates this kind of three-dimensional space that has kind of a constantly changing light source. So that video itself, I think in some ways I really meant as sort of an entryway into this kind of dream world and aspiration of just like, it is actually embedded in there, is that quote about words so pretty we would go out of our way to say them out loud. And so I think it's just meant as kind of a space and a sort of place to travel through into it. So
sure, yeah, it sort of reads with the layering almost like a mineral based portal.
Yeah,
right. It sort of has like that kind of crystal like edges and the geode sort of formation in the way that the angles line up.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the idea, I guess, of just like connoting some sort of realm that is associated with kind of taking us out of our everyday. So so then we could just look at the photos, I think, now. That might then people can really see what we're talking about.
Okay.
So Tim, I think if you just start with those, and if I have anything to say as we look at them, or Terence too, we can just
pull it up here. Should I just kind of go through them slideshow wise, or like starting here?
Yeah.
All right.
Is it possible to bring them bigger?
Sure. Yeah. Give me a sec. Kinda...
Oh yeah, maybe only if we can see the whole picture. I think. Yeah. So.
I think that might be best.
Okay, that's okay.
Yeah. If you want me to like zoom in on something specific,
okay,
I can do that.
Yeah. And this one, I think one thing I will say about it is just the head felt significant for me, just in terms of, I mean, it has a little bit of a satellite dish kind of look to it, but really more thinking of it just in the way that flowers send out signals in a way that it kind of it had that association for me.
And I remember I was so excited when I saw you kind of, posting these tests on Instagram and sort of immediately liking me, like, oh, like such an interesting aesthetic that you're playing with here, and so akin to the ones that I'm interested in and that inspire me. So I was happy to be cheering you along from the sidelines, and then excited when you reached out to have a conversation.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. It's okay. This one is, again, these are things I picked up from the sidewalk, and this is the little cones from a deodar cedar that is up the street from me. Again, it's things just like I'm noticing now on the sidewalk, but it clearly also it kind of speaks for itself a little bit, maybe, having to do with sort of gender, sexuality, and the body, and sort of just embodying that. And I think also there's a couple of them that really have to do with trees and wood, and this one, of course, does, and just the puppet itself being carved out of wood. And when we're talking about the botanical, like that's sort of at the core of it is this wooden figure, and the wood just being, just the slow growing, quieter kind of botanical core to all these bodies, I guess. So.
Should I keep going?
Yeah, you can keep going.
Okay. All right.
This one is another one. It wasn't quite as complete. I just was kind of playing around with this kind of honeycomb paper and thinking about, again, like plants and also their relationship to bees, and just this sort of communications sent out through color and scent and that. So.
And I love the sort of the tension between these, where obviously the hand carved wood has that organic hand wrought quality, and then picking up the seed pods or the pine cones or the cones in the previous slide, but then this sort of like performative mating ritual color palette of like a Party City presentation,
right?
Right, like I like the tension between those two, and there's an interesting dynamic at play there, right? To be sort of how are we exuberant, what do we take on to be able to perform outlandishness,
right,
as opposed to the intricacies of the natural systems themselves, right? The shape and internal structure and mechanism of the cone,
right,
as a means to propagate out in the world.
Yeah, right. And that, like, in our human world, there's something just more garish and celebratory and kind of fun and fake about it, even though it's sort of associating with something that's very like natural in that way. But I think that's what I like about it too. It's just like, I think it's something I've thought about a lot, is the idea of fakeness too, and fakeness being a form of authenticity too, that there is sort of the things that we project and we build and construct as a way of expressing ourselves, is often really vulnerability. It's like, I want to be this thing, and it might be like this crazy, outrageous thing, and that's scary to be. And so, often it can be this kind of aesthetic that is that sort of flashiness.
Yeah, and those ideas of sort of, how we perform pride, and how, in so much of queer and LGBTQ plus community, this idea of pageantry and adapting the tropes of different pageants as our own, and how we how we can be subversive in doing so, and yet own it in a way that is authentic. Thinking about obviously drag culture, and I'd love to go through all of the residency photos, and then I've got some photos that Tim can bring up with where my mind went. But thinking about how drag has existed in popular culture, through the 20th century into the 21st century, and this ideas of when is it too much and over the top and fake, and when is someone trying to quote unquote pass, and like, what does pass even mean anymore? And I think it's this really interesting moment where queer youth are redefining the terms immediately. And I think that there's an interesting conversation happening around like neo-pronouns, for example. And how the use of singular they is, like you were saying at the top, this idea of an exploration of language. And the idea of neo-pronouns being using a noun for the pronoun itself. So those from the radical fairy community referring to fae self as as their pronouns.
Right.
Yeah, Tim's brought up a video of someone who I feel is very akin to the work that you're exploring.
That's amazing. I did not know this artist.
Yeah, this artist is extraordinary, and mostly mask work, and often botanical inspired or sort of alien, or also kind of working with kind of the ideas of glitch and figuring out a way to manifest in 3 dimensions what happens in that digital glitch atmosphere. Sort of beyond gender into this new hybrid.
Right.
And then I know one of the other images you were going to share inspired someone who's inspired you for some time. So maybe we'll jump to that one.
Yeah.
Which one should we jump to? Good.
Maybe we'll finish off these and then then we can do a long
sure.
inspirations.
Carry on with the slideshow.
Yeah, cool. That's in my organization of conversation, maybe.
Sure.
By the way, Susan, there are some questions on the Facebook chat, but maybe we'll save them for the end. Like we
okay, if it seems super timely and
there was like one quick question that I think I was asking about if these are all separate puppets with costumes, adornments, or the same ones. Or
they're the same puppet except the head comes off. So the head is replaced, but it's just one puppet, and the puppet has kind of this one, to go to that one right there, you can kind of see the puppet actually has kind of a groove down the middle that allows me to add on to it, and that is my goal as I continue with this project, is to find other ways to adapt the body that involve maybe adapting limbs and extremities or core parts of the body. So it's all just one puppet.
One more from me and I'll let you keep talking.
Okay.
Mark Simon says some have a timeless quality, could be thousands of years old.
Right. Can we go back to that one with the bark just for a second? That one, yeah. Mm-hmm. That one is maybe it's one that feels. I mean, that one feels different to me than all the other ones, but also sort of some core expression of self, I think. And on this very not superficial level, but the wood that I've been carving with came from a tree cut down right near where I grew up, and I've been carving with it for years and years. And I'm almost done with it, but there's a bunch of pieces that have all this bark on it. And I used that to make this piece, I think it just had to do with kind of wood and earthiness and sexuality and identity. So that's what that one is.
Well, and the idea of bark as this sort of like protective layer serving as face is super interesting. Like, in what ways is it porous?
Right. And in what ways not at all, because you're like this big protective thing. But the bark is really cork-like, of course. This one I haven't even just really unpacked that much myself, but I made it and I'm like, that one feels like right. And then I'm like, I don't know what it means exactly.
Awesome. What's the scale? What's the scale of the puppet?
The puppet is about 18 or 20 inches tall. Okay. Yeah. That one, I think it sort of just touches back to what we were talking about before, of just like, I mean, it's kind of zinnia inspired, and a sense of, I mean, I called all these ones party people because,
totally.
They are. And this one, is quite Lee Bowery inspired, so we'll look at his work, which I didn't really realize till I was halfway through it, and then I'm like, oh, of course.
This one came up, I was like, oh, look, it's the school of Lee Bowery.
Yeah, definitely. But I was like, oh, of course, this is where this is coming from, so. This one really just inspired by some plant structure and just the face is sort of this thing that collects in a way, and also I think there is just something that I'm attracted to in terms of obscuring the face, but also projecting something that is quite has a kind of wildness to it. And then also just kind of that structure that takes over the body is sort of inspired by anthers of plants and that whole. So it's sort of a whole idea of self-fertilization, I think, too.
Amazing. Yeah, there'll be a lot to work with that crevice through the center of the body.
Yeah, that's what to do. So this was also my first experimentation with 3D printing. So that
amazing.
That red center of it was all 3D printed.
Oh, cool.
So.
And what's the material? Is it like a resin?
It's kind of like it's a plastic kind of thing. That was probably the aspect I didn't love so much, is how plasticky it is in the end. But it's pretty fun to make and design. And also, I'm a really over the top 3D model designer. It took it like a day and a half to make. So.
Right. Like, how much detail do you want?
Yeah, exactly. So that's a learning curve. So that's good. We can go. I don't know if there's more. I think that's maybe the last one. Yeah, great. So I can show a little. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
There was just a few pictures. I still want to show the video. We should do that. Okay. But we could look at those pictures for a second. In the inspirations. Maybe.
Oh, got it. Right here.
Yeah.
Wow.
So Lee Bowery was a British artist back in the 80s and early 90s.
And in the 90s as well, yeah.
Yeah. And there's so much to him. If you don't know, just you can look him up for sure. It's just played. And this. There's maybe one other Lee Bowery one, and then this is Nick Cave, who is another artist that was a real inspiration as I was doing these projects. And he makes these things called sound suits, and some of them are made from botanical things, and others are made just from found objects. And they always have an obsessive kind of over the top, like just volume wise of the objects that he puts into the things. So for sure. Oh yeah, that's another Lee Bowery piece.
And one of Lee's most famous performances actually was at Wigstock, which is the queer sort of summer festival put together by Lady Bunny. And I was there the year that Lee Bowery did an entire sort of lip sync drag performance number. It's a day-long festival with queens lip singing, some singing, and Lee did like a full traditional number. I can't remember what the initial song was, and had a big elaborate costume, not unlike the ones we're seeing. And then the number ended, the song switched to something else, and Lee gave birth on stage, like went onto a gurney and laid back. And his wife, who's also a collaborator and partner, came through and was birthed through his vessel and cave and started dancing on stage. And it was like such a amazing East Village queer moment where it was sort of like, all these queens started screaming because, there was stage blood and all that. But then you realize that Lee had performed an entire number with another human strapped to his person, and obviously served as an inspiration to club kids and drag queens for decades to come.
Yeah, it's amazing you were there for that, Terence.
It was a fun moment. It was definitely a fun moment.
Yeah.
No, but thinking about that through line and kind of, looking at the inspiration images you shared and the exploration that you've done in the workshop, like initially I was thinking historic about in the writings that you shared with me about this idea of, grasping at performing gender and the intersection of identities that we all carry. And I was thinking back to earliest 20th century, and there was an artist, Barbette, who performed in trapeze and drag, was the muse of Jean Cocteau. And then I came across Barbette's work because in the 90s, John Kelly, the New York performance artist, did a piece inspired by Barbette and was doing trapeze in drag at BAM. But then on the other side of the gender spectrum, like thinking Claude Cahun, who performed that really butch persona in early 20th century, and then fast forwarding to the 90s and this kind of moment of let's call it a second wave of gay liberation, and then to where we're at today, thinking about the popularity of like RuPaul's Drag Race,
right?
For example, and this last season that just ended last week, they had for the first time in the series a trans man performing with their character Gottmik, who is a drag queen.
Yeah. How come it took so long?
Well, not only how come it took so long, but like the categories just kind of melt away.
Yeah.
Into performance, and what does performance look like?
Yeah.
Within the popular cultural realm.
Right.
That the Drag Race is on VH1 as a format.
Right.
I found super interesting.
Yeah.
And definitely kind of in that spirit of Lee Bowery and that idea of playing with forms and thinking about the more than human.
Yeah. Right.
And the crossovers there.
Yeah, and the way that art, and art objects and costume form as that bridge sometimes of like the aspiring to that, and being able to aspire to that through, this look or this object or this thing that sort of represents that. It's powerful, I think.
Totally. Yeah, I want to, Tim, maybe we bring up, there's a photograph of Bjork wearing a mask. There was kind of an interesting confluence of artists coming together with musician and performer Bjork, partnering with James T. Mary, who does a lot of mask work, really intricate, almost like jewelry level quality metal masks and face masks, often replicating things from the natural landscape. So looking at
this one,
there we go, either of those, yeah.
Okay.
Right. So taking the idea of an orchid and transferring it to the face, then obviously working in relationship with the costuming. But James D. Mary definitely came to mind, and then there's another one of his right there below. But that idea of obscuring the face and playing with the face and thinking about botanical inspirations. This is right in that same that same pocket.
What's with the eyes? There's not like just replace her eyes or something.
Yeah. So the other one. So the makeup artist during this series of collaborations just below, there you go, is also a drag performer named Hungry, who is based in Berlin. And Hungry's work is all about kind of extending the visual atmosphere to be other. So be it flora or fauna or you name it, but this sort of like high gloss, high glam, often Swarovski crystal embedded masks or like maskettes, like little bits and pieces that build up on the architecture of the face. There's another one where it's like, just sort of like different sections of a mask on the face. Playing into, which could be bark-like or could be, kind of geological forms.
Yeah.
That type of thing. I think these ideas of artists like this kind of embracing the beauty of the natural world and applying it or mixing it into sort of traditional drag or gender performance, I think is super interesting and very, very much in line with the exploration that you're doing. And then the last artistic collaboration I want to mention, the performance artist Taylor Mack, whose personal pronoun is Judy.
Love that.
Judy's costume designer name is Machine Dazzle. And Taylor's shows often have this wonderful, way over the top costume and makeup. But for the holiday show that Taylor did at the end of 2020, scroll up, I think it came just before those. Machine Keeping, there we go. That one right there. Where they went in and they worked with, I think that's the Renaissance era paintings where they had all the fruits and vegetables incorporated with the face. But this idea of just taking the beauty of the natural world and like we were saying before, embracing the cheap aesthetic of pageantry and party people with this natural exuberance and abundance beyond.
Right.
Machine also just costumed for Taylor. They did an exploration of the work of Walt Whitman. And I think it was the image just above that, Tim.
Oh, okay.
Is that a performance that's coming that we're going to?
Yeah, there's video. I think there's videos. I think it was for New York Public Television, so I think it's available online. But there's like those sort of costumes with Taylor performing the works of Walt Whitman.
Oh my God.
Like talk about the juxtaposition.
Yes.
And then it was super fun over the pandemic to be watching Machine's feed, because they were in Hawaii, and so they did an entire series of working with the fallen palm fronds and all the different flora of Hawaii in masks and really large constructed costume pieces. And so maybe we'll go to those images next, where there's sort of three, I think, at the bottom of our thread. There we go.
Okay. This one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So,
Nice.
taking all the different, flowers that happened to be on site wherever it was that he was doing pandemic, and creating these really over the top and beautiful, lushly exuberant masks and costumes. I think there's going to be a book project. It seems like they're being documented for a book, but I haven't seen it announced yet. Just casual, just
with the clothes as well. It's good.
Yeah, just casual Birks and then a 4 foot wide mask. That's how I'm going to go to, yeah, exactly. I'm going to go to Trader Joe's in that tomorrow, maybe.
Yeah.
Should I pull this up, Terence? Or?
Yeah, sure. Sort of two more approaches from the same series.
Oh, that one's nice.
Immediately I'm sort of taken to like, what is the fantasy ritual that will be performed with a mask like that?
Right.
Like there's sort of like an implied lineage or history of actions that feels like it wants to come through.
Yeah. Well, those are amazing. I want to now spend a lot of time looking to all of these and see that Walt Whitman performance.
Right. Totally.
I think I should show that video maybe before we have to log off. Tim, do you have those?
Maybe while I pull that up, I missed a little comment from Martian.
Okay.
I was wondering if there was some connection with Leslie Feinberg. Is there any... Where are you heading with the Leslie Feinberg aspect?
I don't know. I definitely came to a little bit of a wall with the copyright issues. My idea was to have people just reading from her work, and maybe puppets that would read from her work. But it's a future project, maybe, if it's allowable. But mostly at this point, I really just decided, like, more just as inspiration, I think. So, and so these we can watch these two videos, and they're just short, and they're just, again, meant as kind of, they're experiments with the puppets and using OBS and live mixing, but more just as a kind of dream-like world of just kind of a both dream bodies and interaction and affection, and kind of inspired a little bit by the Louis Fuller dances with the fabric, the serpentine.
That's right. Go ahead and play it.
Anyway, that's all I'm going to say. We can just watch them.
This is silent as well, right, Susan?
Yeah, silent also.
Okay. 2 minutes.
Tim, the next one has some sound, actually, and the credit for it's Matt Barbier. It's some music of his.
Okay. All right, let me play that right now.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's that. Those are just sort of some early experiments with it all. So really more to come.
I'm so curious to see where it goes.
Yeah. So, yeah. Tim, are there any other questions or anything before we sign off?
We have just a couple of comments, I guess. Feels like it's very alien and yet uncanny. I think Cheryl Revkin says, "I love your work, Susan. Inspires me to create more dolls." That's great. And the whole presentation this afternoon is brilliant.
Well, I'm glad we left time for these comments.
Here, let me tell you. I'm not so good at this. There's a question from Laura Height. Is this on Vimeo? Are we seeing it with the...
Oh, it is actually. It's on my Vimeo page.
So our friends could go ahead and pull it up. Okay. Maybe I could go ahead and just put that in the comments afterward.
Yeah.
See that. Great. Martian Strikes Again was talking about they were a fan of Diego Montoya. Makes masks and other embellished pieces for Gottmik and other RPDR queens.
Okay.
Yeah, Diego's masks are extraordinary, and often works with Sasha Velour, who was the winner a few seasons back. But Diego's work is extraordinary.
Yeah, I think most of the questions are sort of, you guys kind of answered.
Okay, great.
While you were talking, but
yeah.
I think there's a lot of very amazed and very people admiring this very much. Appreciating the work that you're doing. Yeah.
So what comes next, and what's your timeline, Susan?
I don't have a timeline yet. I'm going to continue making these costumes for this puppet, and then also making sort of some the next stage, and I want to make some larger things also that would be wearable, so masks and also just prosthetics that are kind of plant inspired. So that's what's coming next, and then just continue to make these short videos, and eventually there'll be a performance aspect to it. So it's a slow rollout of the project. So the pandemic has put me in the mode of just letting things kind of organically roll out. So that's sort of what's happening.
Our new relationship with time.
Yes, I don't know that it'll hold. I hope it does in some ways. So,
Well, I appreciate you inviting me into your process.
Oh, it's been so great. Thank you, Terence, so much for all that you brought into it. And so it gave me a lot to think about. So
awesome.
Yeah. And thank you, Tim, for making it all possible. So,
no.
Yeah.
Great.
So Tim, let me get this right. On Sunday at 7, right?
Yes. Correct.
Gina Napolitan is our next Automata artist in residence who's going to be presenting her work. So, so everybody tune back in on Sunday.
Indeed. Oh, one more thing. If we have a new website, so for our friends at Automata, automatala.org. All of this will be kind of quickly rolled out and presented, and we have a running kind of archive thanks to Susan and Janie, who's been
and Tim, who's been putting a lot of work into that, and it's really, you can go back and see so much of the stuff that's happened at Automata.
2004, I believe.
Yeah.
So great. But until then, thanks everybody for watching, and thank you again to Susan and Terence. We'll see you soon.
All right, signing off.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.